All right, good day. My name is Corey Jones. We're on the second half of Morning Coffee, and today I'm joined with two esteemed guests. I have Dr. Hubbard, who is a neurologist.
That's correct.
And I have Dr. Barnett, who is part of emergency medicine. And today we're going to talk about something I'm pretty sure is on everybody's mind, and that's vaccines, specifically flu vaccine, but more specifically the COVID vaccine. And I want to get right to it.
Sure.
There's a lot of distrust out there, political and just people who are already anti-vaxxers. Can you talk about a little bit of the distrust and why that's not necessary when it comes to COVID vaccine?
Sure, if it's all right, I'll go first.
Yeah, sure, please.
So as a bit of background, I'm married to a pediatrician, and one of the big talking points that concerns all the time is being brought up in my household is the anti-vaxxer movement. And that was actually predicated on some false science that was debunked, but then was picked up where people are trying to find an answer to autism.
Right.
One of the things that Sean and I were talking about before we got on the studio here was the fact that we've gone to school with folks who've become scientists, who've become the chemists who are developing the vaccines.
Right.
These people's reputation's on the line. They're not going to end up pushing out something that's going to end up hurting others and destroying their careers unless they truly felt that the science behind it was legitimate. Would you agree?
I would. I mean, the practice of healthcare, the practice of science, there's an entire culture around making sure that what we intended to do, we're actually doing. And so that's what we practice every day. It's what we study every day. But it really embodies the entire environment that we work in.
Just the energy that I'm getting from the two of you would make me feel comfortable. If you told me, Corey, here, use this vaccine or use this therapy or use this course of medicine, I'm going to trust you. And Dr. Barnett has been on the show before talking about in the very beginning of COVID about giving us some good tips, some safety tips and so forth. You're saying that there's some politicization that has been attached to this. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know I hear it from watching the three big main news media channels. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think the very fact that Operation Warp Speed or having the discussion of hydroxychloroquine before there was much in the way of science to back it up from somebody who does not have a background in science, chemistry, pharmaceuticals, population genetics, all has led to a great deal of mistrust. There's also some historical reasons why different cultures are frightened of vaccines also. We were discussing this before.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I mean, when we have these mixed agendas going on, most of the times we are in the business of doing the right things at the right time for the right reasons only. But when we attach a name like Warp Speed, now there's a different agenda. We have to have all of this by a certain date. Generally, we're happy to get the results that we desire when the date arrives. We do things pretty rapidly, but not so swiftly. But then what happens is that we enjoy a significant amount of trust when we know that we've put the work in that it needs, and that we're not doing it for any other agenda, but rather that it works.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I've also been listening to some other pundits talking about there's a lot of mistrust, specifically in the African American community, about different vaccines and the things that the government is doing. And either we feel that we're not getting prioritized, or we're getting left behind, or some other reason. Can you talk about that?
Well, sure. I mean, I would say that globally, there is a sense that African Americans and other minorities, people that feel disempowered, we generally feel that, we're not sure exactly what the agendas are of the people that have all this power. Are they trying to help us? Are they trying to forward their own pockets? Are they trying to look good for people that whose support they want? So we're not sure what their actual desires are, but we don't feel necessarily that they're looking out for our well-being all the time.
Okay.
So that is the source of a lot of distrust.
Okay, and I know one of the points you wanted to make, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think this is where you're going, is that there is a separation, right? The government can be pushing one agenda, but the FDA and the medical community and the pharmaceutical companies can be doing a different agenda, and they can they could work synergistically?
The pharmaceutical companies, as has been reported in the media, have actually signed a pact that they're not going to end up pushing out a vaccine until it's gone through all 3 phases of testing, and they have a reasonable degree of safety associated with the vaccine. No vaccine is going to have 100% safety nor 100% efficacy. Even the flu vaccine has elements of risks of having side effects. That's and is not 100% effective.
Right.
But when we're talking about a world where we're having, I think we've reached a 200,000 death mark.
That's right.
It has struck the minority community incredibly hard. We have the economic impact. I can't count how many stores I passed driving down here today that are now shuttered.
Right.
This has to be fixed. And we need to get behind the scientists, and we need to help build trust that what is coming out is going to help all of us, despite our race, our ethnicity, our religion, that this is going to be something that can help bring the world back to its feet.
Earlier you mentioned hydroxychloroquine and zithromycin, and we've been hearing a lot about that. And again, I'm not a virologist, I'm not a doctor. I hear these words, I hear people talking about them. Can you guys explain what those actually are and why they may or may not be effective as a therapeutic or as a preventative measure?
Well, we're used to using hydroxychloroquine for other reasons. Around the world, it's been used more as something to treat malaria. We use it here in America and other developed countries to treat conditions that are more autoimmune, so it has some anti-inflammatory properties. So at the outset, we were a little concerned. Okay, we know it works against parasites, we know it works against inflammation, but why do we think it's going to work against a virus? As it turns out, we're learning that this virus does cause some inflammation, and so there's some idea that it could work on some levels. But we didn't want to rush to judgment about, about these things. We wanted to really understand it. I think that's to say about that, correct?
Yeah, and the concern that we both have, again, which is why we're here, is the whole political pressure that has been expounded on the news and on TV is undermining the trust that the public should have in the pharmaceutical companies, the scientists, and ultimately the clinicians. And there are some bad clinicians, and there are some bad scientists, but if the system is allowed to work appropriately, we can end up with a product that we can trust. And mind you, there are 4 companies working on this. One in the UK, which did their job correctly. When they saw a problem, they halted the experiment to make certain that there was not a problem.
Right.
So again, the system is working, but to have political statements recommending regimens which are not tried or tested, which have not gone through peer review, is dangerous and undermines what we're trying to achieve, which is saving lives.
Yes. And now I know, being a neurologist, the one instance that made that one study stop, you're able to speak a little bit about?
Well, yes. One of the participants in one of the studies developed a spinal cord issue where there's inflammation in a part of the spinal cord. The spinal cord is a part of the nervous system, the central nervous system, as a matter of fact, and it transmits all of the information from our brain to our legs and arms. And so what happens is that this person developed transverse myelitis, where this aspect of the spinal cord became inflamed, and now they're having weakness and difficulty controlling their bowel and bladder, which is what can occur. Anyway, that's serious. That'll threaten the way we live our life.
Absolutely.
That happens.
And is there any science to say that that's directly related to vaccine trials, or is it something that could have happened just absent a vaccine trial, or we don't know yet?
It could happen with any virus.
That's right. That's right. I mean, generally it's autoimmune in and of itself, so it happens after there's been some sort of infection in the past. And it can come up next week, a month later.
Okay.
And the basis behind a vaccine is you're trying to give your body a clue of what might be coming. You're trying to induce an immune response. So by definition, that is an inherent risk, but it was just one case out of, I forget how many thousands of folks were already in this trial at this point.
It sounds like we're gonna have to take a break after this quick question, but it sounds like you're both telling everybody, don't stress over this one case. Pay attention to it, but don't stress over this one case. Have confidence in what the pharmaceutical companies and the FDA is doing together.
I have so much confidence in this that I already shared with you that and I'm hoping Sean as well, and maybe another physician, are willing to get vaccinated when the vaccine comes out on TV.
Okay.
If you want to arrange that,
Yes.
I have enough faith in this that I'm willing to go on camera and take the vaccine as a board-certified emergency medicine physician.
I want you guys to sleep on that. Come back in about 2 minutes. We're going to talk about that and some more information about COVID-19 vaccines, the flu vaccine, and just basically staying healthy during this upcoming fall and winter season. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Child support and custody. We listen to them, we gather the information, and we help them make informed decisions. We pride ourselves in our knowledge and our experience. We try to settle cases when we can, but we zealously advocate for our clients at trial as experienced and successful litigators. If you need help on any of these family life issues, please call us for an appointment at 215-542-2105 or check us out on our website at www.shemtablaw.com.
So, I got this new family, and I don't know what it is about this one, but she can't seem to put down that toy. All day long. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, and she even talks to it. She talks to that more than she talks to him. What's up, bro? Nice shirt. Who's she talking to? Her mom? She talks to her mom a lot.
Why buy local? When you shop with local businesses, you're spending your money on more than just the item you're buying. You're adding a building block to your neighborhood. It starts with a single purchase, maybe a cup of coffee, groceries from a local co-op, or even a shiny new bicycle from one of the nearly 28 million small businesses nationwide. Your money doesn't stay in the till for long though. Local business owners use the money to create a lot of economic activity in your neighborhood, like buying from suppliers, many of whom are also local businesses. Paying taxes to the city, which builds and maintains the infrastructure we all rely on. Employing local workers, contributing to 65% of the net new jobs each year. Add this all together and you've got a recipe for a happier, healthier, more connected neighborhood. Now that's an investment worth making.
All right, I'm going to put the doctors on the spot, and I know there's been some studies that say that these neck gaiters may not be as effective as the N95s or the surgical masks. So, can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down, or is this better than nothing?
It's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing.
Okay, because I know there's a lot of people out there that are anti-maskers, right? And for whatever reason, we were given contradictory information in the very beginning because there weren't enough masks. So we're saying that masks may not be good, may be good. What are your thoughts on masks and why we should be wearing them?
Well, the first.
Yeah, sure. Well, you brought up the N95 masks. I mean, there's a lot of science on masks themselves. We say N95, and it's become a part of the lexicon, but that name was given because it's 95% effective against particles that are very small, like 0.3 microns. It's very small, and it's been tested and tested and tested. And the ones that we use typically around the hospital, and you see people wearing the blue ones, the surgical masks, they're not called N63s, but they're 63% effective. So if you put a couple of those on, now you're doing pretty well. Those neck gaiters, and I like that one in particular, it provides a barrier, so a barrier does help. But I think if we use some of the science that we have, the science is there, we know what these masks do, we know that they help, and just barriers in general, just apply some common sense. I mean, obviously somebody's around the corner and down the street, they have COVID, then it's not going to affect us here.
Right.
So the more, if there's distance, that helps. So some distance helps. Distance masking and general hygiene.
And then so distance and then time of exposure is really
Quantity of
big
virus
too?
exposure.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, it is helpful to keep moving a lot of times, and so we've become accustomed in the hospital because everybody's moving fast anyway.
Okay.
There aren't that many people that are standing around having long conversations. Now those conversations have gotten even shorter over the past 6 months, and so we've worked it into our social management also.
So the other thing that needs to be pointed out about the masks.
Yes.
First of all, there's a disconnect. If you don't see your family member dying of COVID, it becomes something abstract, something removed. I had a neighbor who actually said to me, is it really as bad as what I'm seeing on TV? Because I don't know anything about what's going on. I don't see it. So despite the fact that there was videos of mass graves and trucks loading up bodies out of New York City hospitals.
That's right.
And recently there was a 23-year-old OBGYN resident
That's right.
who just died of COVID-19. Whose love and passion was helping people and delivering babies. They're disconnected, they don't see it. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize, you could be standing in a supermarket and the person in front of you might have breast cancer, is on chemotherapy. You're protecting them. I think again, I can't get the word out.
I
but
get
the
it.
political movement to argue that it's their right not to wear a mask is selfish to a degree because you're protecting others. You don't know if your best friend might be having an illness that he or she is trying to keep quiet and their immune system is already limited and at risk.
That's right.
So that's the real reason by wearing the mask. It's less protecting yourself. You have no idea if you're an asymptomatic carrier.
Right.
You run the risk of giving that mom in the supermarket who's just started her first round of chemo exposure to a virus that couldn't take her from her children.
Right.
I think part of the early challenge with COVID was that, I mean, we've called it a silent killer, but, back 2001, 9/11, we all together saw this major tragedy.
Right.
Nobody argued, did it really happen? Or was it some sort of a trick that they played on TV?
Right.
The whole world lived it together.
Right.
Here, the whole world is living in real time, but when we closed down the hospitals for elective procedures, for the first time ever in 20 years, I saw things in the hospital that I've never seen. But I'd go outside of the hospital and life was, birds were chirping, flowers were starting to bloom in the spring. It was like sort of business as usual in a way outside. People were doing a lot of the same things. But on the inside, it was a war zone.
Really?
So we lived something together, Jordan and I did, and it impacted, and people that got COVID and that had to go to the hospital, we saw something and lived something that people that were disconnected, and let's say the South, Texas, they were like, what's going on? There's no big deal, come on,
Right.
So that's kind of unfortunate in a way because it made it so that these people had to take the word of the people that are on the inside.
Right.
That's unfortunate. If everybody had seen that, like a World Trade Center event, people would be asking, what can I do to prevent this? And then people would be wearing masks. It wouldn't be a big deal.
That was one of the questions I always had. I said, if you could see COVID, like the smoke from a forest fire, do you think you would act differently?
That's right.
Right?
It's a hidden killer, which is disconnected for a lot of people. And this also goes back into perhaps the discussion we had earlier about how it's hitting certain minority groups higher because who tends to live in the projects where the virus can spread a lot easier because the people are on top of each other.
Right.
Close proximity.
And then the
If you're
access to effective health care.
Right. So if you're living in, suburbia, where you've got your house separated by 1/3 of an acre, you're not going to have as many people being affected by the virus. And a lot of the folks living in the inner cities in these projects also have comorbidities. So these individuals are getting a lot sicker.
Okay.
And to go back to Sean's point about the war zone, there were staff and colleagues of mine in the ER, one of which nearly ended up intubated in an ICU in the region here because he was a frontline emergency department worker. We had 4 individuals in our ER who had gotten sick when this first started.
Yeah, and I remember talking to you throughout this whole event, and you kept stressing to me, so Corey, this is real, and we were working on together trying to give precautions to the first responders, police, fire, and EMS on how to take care of each other and take care of the public and not introduce themselves to exposure if they didn't need to, you know, given protocols and who needs to go in to a potential exposure. I had a guest on who was talking about the flu vaccine and encouraging people, especially this season, how important that flu vaccine is. And can you talk about why that's going to be so much more important?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah.
All right. So getting the flu doesn't preclude getting COVID.
Right.
Furthermore, the issue of weeding out which is flu, which is COVID becomes problematic. Furthermore, the fact is that if you have somebody who's now immunosuppressed by the flu, we have no idea yet if that's going to make COVID worse.
So that's still up in the air. We don't even know that
We
yet.
haven't even hit the flu season yet.
That's right.
Okay.
So if people who are physiologically stressed because they have a pre-existing illness are more prone to die, then it makes some logical, reasonable leap to presume that if you take somebody with asthma, COPD, chronic emphysema, chronic bronchitis, and now you assault them with the influenza virus, and they can theoretically concurrently get COVID, what is our mortality rate going to look like?
Right. It's certainly not going to make it better.
No.
That's right.
Certainly not going to make it better. So it seems like I'm getting some concurrence here that we definitely want to recommend people follow their doctor's advice, but get the flu shot and get it immediately, because it takes a while for those antibodies to come up.
They don't even have to go to their doctor's office. Walmart, Target, Walgreens, if they still exist. There's signs all over the place.
Yeah.
And I know my dad, who's in his 80s, just went to pick up his prescription, got a free flu shot from his local pharmacy.
Right.
So you don't even need to see your doctor to get it.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, we've been dealing with this for years because we're taking care of patients that have conditions like the flu. We're in front of them, listening to their chest, listening to their heart. We're in close proximity. We never really thought about proximity and what that would do for health so much before as we are right now.
Yeah.
Before, we were just thinking about, well, who's at risk? Like Dr. Barnett was saying, you know, people with asthma, people that have immune problems to begin with, people of advanced age, people with lung conditions. But also, we were not dealing with a virus that can be so deadly.
Right.
You know, I think it now makes sense that when we have a vaccine that's been tested like what we're used to in our culture, that makes sense for everybody to get it, I would say.
We're up against time. I want each of you to take 10 seconds, looking in that camera, and convince the American public and everybody in the world why they should get flu and COVID vaccines and wear a mask.
You know, I would say that the medical culture, the treating community, there's a science and there's a culture of doing the right things all the time, really. I mean, there is a very high percentage of what happens in the hospital. Things go extremely well, and even outside of the hospital. When there is let's say a clinician, you know, we've heard it said that, okay, there's a bad apple in this group, bad apples in that group, you know. But when there is let's say, bad apple in the healthcare system, it's kind of like when you have a zipper and there's one of those little ticks that's off, the zipper doesn't really work, you know, so you end up having to move it aside. You just can't use it anymore. So bad apples that are practicing don't really work out very well, and they don't work out very long. They get sort of weeded out, you know.
Okay.
I could practice in Georgia, I could practice in Florida, California, anywhere, and the culture is really not that different, you know. So, you know, I hope that what you're hearing is that there is a culture of doing the right things at the right time, and I trust that culture to prevail even in the midst of all of this
That's great.
politicization.
That's great. Dr. Barnett?
I would say amen to everything that Dr. Hubbard said.
Okay.
Furthermore, I'm going to repeat what I said before. The issue of wearing masks is not one of personal freedom. It's about being a true American, a true good human being, and protecting others around you. I was recently tested negative for COVID for a medical procedure I'm going to have. I know I'm not putting other people theoretically at risk right now.
Right.
Furthermore, in regards to the vaccine, I have enough faith and trust in the people who are developing it, and the scientific community who's got their reputations and are working based on a desire to help others, that I am willing if you would have us to get the vaccine on TV to demonstrate my trust in the system.
We are absolutely going to do that. I already spoke with the producer. He's on board. I'm on board. Like I said, if you guys come in with this attitude and mentality and are this calm, I'm probably going to get it too, providing that it's free.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be free. Because
All right.
again, that's the answer to fix what's going on with this country economically
Yeah.
and worldwide.
That's right.
All right, Dr. Barnett, Dr. Hubbard, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for being honest and open. And I hope that our listeners and viewers got from this, follow the signs, trust these two doctors here, protect yourself, protect each other, get your flu vaccine, get the COVID vaccine when it comes out, wear your mask, be safe, be healthy. Come back next Thursday for Morning Coffee. I'm Corey Jones. Be ready.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You got
Thanks
it.
for having us.
You got it.
It's a pleasure.